Done. Fantastic.
So the presenter that was at the training course that I've had for 2 days, he was a gin. Oh, yeah. And I vaguely remember thinking, oh, yeah, I reckon
If you're not on mute, stick yourself on mute.
and around to go on to and I remember, yeah. So,
Wait, you want me to put?
He was there. So it's funny.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Oh, well, nobody's turning their camera on. Anybody's got their camera on? Just a few people. That's fine then. We'll get started. Good to have you all here this evening. Doing something different again. A bit of gin. Usually we do 2 or 3 whiskey shows every month. But a couple of months ago, we started doing some gin. We wanted to sort of get to know about gin a little bit better and obviously talk to the people that make it and are behind the scenes in these distilleries. And we started off with Edinburgh gin and then thought it was quite a success. So let's have a go and let's try and make our way down to Tasmania now and discover what they're making down in Tasmania. We're going to basically tonight go to the Lark Distillery. Now we associate Lark Distillery as I guess whiskey, mostly about whiskey, but actually the Lark Distillery is also associated with a really good brand of gin called 40 Spotted. It is not a new brand of gin, but they have sort of recently changed their bottlings and changed their labelings and changed basically their marketing. So it's really good to see that fresh approach and really got their sort of flavors and their gin right and got a really good range now. So it was really on our radar. So we thought let's dive in there and let's find out what they've got to say. Tonight you've got 6 gins in these bags here. Hopefully everybody's received them. Just a reminder, if you've never done these shows before, when you open these up, open them up and make sure you take the little cap off that's there, or you'll end up in your drink and you'll end up either swallowing it or your gin will taste like or smell like plastic. So just make sure that doesn't go in the glass when you poured them. Tonight's order, we're going to go classic gin, we're going raspberry, then citrus, wild rose, then honey, then the Pinot. So that's classic raspberry, citrus, and then wild rose, honey, Pinot. And then we'll finish off in that delicious cocktail mixed up by yours truly. And I'll talk about that as well. So should be quite delicious to end this on. Tonight, we're joined by Will Jenke, who is working at the, I guess for the Australian Whisky Holdings, the company that own Lark Distillery. And he mainly looks after sales and I guess marketing as well, and talking to people like myself on how the brand's going and how it's changing, and not only that, what new products are coming out as well. So Will's joined us tonight, and also Rick Hoedjes as well, and he's joined us from the distillery because he's actually out at the distillery, and hopefully he'll show us around. But he's the guy behind it all. So we've got some. If you've got some questions, stick them in the chat tonight. I'll be controlling the chat, and I'll be controlling basically any questions that we've got for him or Will, and basically trying to dig in deep and find out how these guys make or how they come up with a flavor concept. Not only that, if you want any history of Lark or any history of Tasmanian distilling for gin or maybe even whiskey as well, you're more than welcome to ask in the chat. And we will have a one-to-one question at the end as well. Okay, I'll write up all the information, the gins, etc. In the chat as well, so you know which order they're all coming in. But right now, I'm going to pass you over to Will, and he can introduce himself and then take the tasting on from there. But thanks for joining us, and I hope you have a good evening. Will, over to you.
Thanks, Craig, and hi everyone. Coming to you from Hobart, Tasmania. I'm actually in the comfort of my house. I was going to be out there with Rick, but he said it's pretty cold, mate. You should just stay at home. So thank you, Rick, for that. So I've been working at Lark for about 6 years. Rick's been about the same, about 6-7 years. I'll get Rick to talk about himself at Lark, but my journey started in hospitality there, running the cellar door. And then the passion for whiskey was just very strong within, and just sort of grew and grew and grew. And as Lark Distilling Company grew as a company, sort of get forced into wear many hats. So I've seen pretty much every aspect of the distillery, except for I guess distilling gin and whiskey. But I've been there alongside the guys, and they've taught me a lot of things about it. So I'll get Rick to introduce himself, and then we'll get stuck into a gin, and then go into a bit more of the history about the distilling industry and Lark's influence on that, and also how the gin came about. G'day, Rick, how are you?
Hey, Jenke, very well, and yourself?
Well,
Hey, everyone. Yeah, so a little bit of the history of what I've been doing with within the company. I've actually been, it's almost coming up to 9 years this year. So I've been here, this is the longest I think I've stayed on any job. So it's been, yeah, it's obviously something I'd love to do. Originally, I moved to Tasmania with my partner about 10 years ago, and looking for work, I just stumbled upon the Lark cellar door and got offered a job there. I had no background in distilling itself, but for whatever reason, it worked out that I started working behind the bar, and then after a short period of time, I had a sat down for a beer with the then head distiller Chris, and then got offered a job as a brewer and distiller making the Lark whiskey. I did that for a couple of years, and then I noticed one day Chris was doing some blending of gins, and I got super jealous, and I realized that was the job for me. And so I've been heading up 40 Spotted Gin for the last 6 years. So it's been an amazing journey, and hopefully we'll walk through the process tonight and the different gins that we've released over the last 6 years.
Nice one. Yeah, it's pretty similar story for a lot of people down here at Lark, that you start at the cellar door and you've got a keen interest, and you just sort of go into, you never know what's ahead of you in the future, which is quite fun. So we get looked after well down here. But we'll start with the classic gin. If you guys have all got the classic gin at home, this is our flagship gin. Rick, how long's this style been around for? Sort of contemporary traditional style.
So this one was actually, this has a long history of being within the company. So Lynn in 1993 released the pepperberry gin. I actually
pepperberry gin, yeah,
did a bit of digging for you guys. This was the original bottle that the gin used to be released in. Just Lark pepperberry gin. It's an old oil bottle. And the botanicals used was just juniper berries, lemon, and pepper berries. And if anyone doesn't know what pepper berries are, they're a native botanical in Tasmania. They're much more widely known now, mostly because people such as Lynn have been making gin with it. It's an amazing botanical. When you distill it on its own, it's really it's got almost a creamy texture to it when it's distilled. But yeah, coming back to the gin itself, it's the evolution of it. Fast forward till 2015, and when I saw Chris blending some gins together, he added a few more botanicals to it, such as the ruby grapefruit, kaffir lime. And then 6 years ago, when I finally got my break, I added a few more botanicals such as the frankincense and lemon, ginger, and that pretty much makes it what it is today. So, although we call it kind of a London dry style gin, it's almost crossing over to more of a more modern because of the citrus that we have in there. So
yeah,
but yeah, great as a gin and tonic.
Yeah, I agree with that, Rick. It's definitely considered. We always call it a London Dry because it's as similar as you can get to a classic London Dry, but there is so much more of that sweet citrus that comes through with the grapefruit at the back palate that makes it a lot more contemporary in that sense. But pepperberry is always the big kicker in that one, which complements like the savoury notes of the juniper so well. And I think, as Rick touched on with Lynn Lark back in the day, the way it all came about, that she got the inspiration to use pepperberry, Lynn did, was that she was speaking to a friend of hers who ran the Taste of Tasmania festival when it first started back in the early 90s. And she was French and she loved the pepperberries. She was obsessed with them. And so she encouraged Lynn to use pepperberries in the gin. And that's really what excited Lynn to use pepperberry from then on. And I think they ended up making pepperberry liqueurs that were written up in the New York Times as well when they were down at Salamanca markets selling their wares. So it's been a big success story for us, just having that pepperberry in the first place. But also it's just highlighting how like Lynn's influence on the whiskey and gin industry in Australia has sort of come across ever since Bill got the laws changed in 1992 to allow small batch distillation. She was starting to get a bit jealous of Bill having so much fun tinkering with all these spirits and the stills. So she started making gin in 1993. And thank you, Lynn, for that.
I see everyone drinking. I'm getting jealous, so I've actually poured myself one.
Yeah, agreed.
So again, very
Sorry,
aromatic. Oh, sorry. Just saying, again, very aromatic. Lots of lime, ruby grapefruit, and you generally get more of the pepper on the palate, on the finish. Clean, crisp. Do we have any hardcore gin fans? Just flipping through the everyone on the call at the moment.
Can I ask, right, in regards to the pepperberry, what is it you're looking for? Like, if you've not smelled or tasted a pepperberry, what sort of flavors are you looking for as a pepperberry? Is it fruity? Is it spicy? Is it?
It's almost, well, pepper is it's very peppery, but it's a bit of a retarded way to say. But you do get notes of fruits, spice, but to me it's more about texture and what it brings to the spirit. It's like I said before, there's almost a creaminess to it. It's not burning your throat or anything. It's well rounded. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We used to eat them in the cellar door because we used to garnish the gin and tonics with them. And funny enough, it's sort of a bit of a numbing agent, which is quite funny about it.
That's great. It's because it's something you hear an awful lot about Tasmania, but you don't really see it a lot in Melbourne or Sydney, etc. Or and you know, like it's obviously quite a substantial flavour because a few people maybe have dabbled in it, but I feel as though 40 Spotted are probably the only ones right now that I've got it right. You know, like this combination is just right. And but it's interesting that you just nobody really can really know what it is they're looking for in that flavour and that smell, that flavour and smell. Yeah.
Can I just do my teacher thing and say that I actually know a lot about this berry? I teach Indigenous history, and it is actually used for bush tucker and medicinal purposes as like an antiseptic. So it was traditionally collected for those reasons.
That's amazing. I guess why we get the numbing sensation. As I was found all around Tasmania for a long time, up in the mountains. And now I think it grows in Victoria and South Australia and it's spread a lot more. But yeah, I've heard stories about that. Thank you so much for that information. And are you serving it with tonics tonight or are you just enjoying it straight?
I've not supplied anybody with tonic, so it's if they have it. But I've supplied them with like dried, some dried lemon and orange and mandarin. So there, and I've also suggested that and if they want to get some citrus, fresh citrus as well, they can cut up some fresh citrus. What would you say was the best citrus to have with this one?
For me personally, in the bars, ruby grapefruit is fantastic with it.
Yep.
It's something that just really complements the sort of sweetness of the grapefruit that's in there. Rick, did you want to go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, with garnishes, I think it's you're always safe to use a botanical that's already in the gin itself. I do use ruby grapefruit sometimes, but oddly enough, this gin, when I'm making it myself, if it's not just Indian tonic water, I like to serve it with a lot of blueberries and then ice on top, and then a generous serve of the classic with some tonic water. I don't know what it is about the blueberries, but it seems to structurally just works better for me. Yeah,
it's a very versatile gin, and that's why it's sort of the house pour for a lot of our venues around Australia. They use it in cocktails of all sorts. A lot of them use it in Negronis and other sort of Amaro-based cocktails as well, and it goes great in a gin. I guess a gin and tonic was the way we always did it, but also martinis were also a big thing when we first started, before we had all of Rick's new creations, because I think there's a few others that go great in martinis too, but the classic martini was always a good one for us at the cellar door.
I think it's an awesome gin. It's really tasty. It goes from the front right through to the back, and I think we mentioned about texture. It really coats your mouth when you drink it straight, which is really lovely. And to your point, Rick, I've had it a number of times with blueberries or raspberries. I just smash the hell out of it and then just put it in, and you've got this beautiful blue drink. But it's all obviously all completely natural. But straight, what a beautiful mouthfeel it has. It's really, really tasty.
Hey, Craig,
has anyone come across the 40 Spotted brand in the past, or like Distillery? I feel like it's taking us a bit of time to get out to the masses, but those big fans of spirits have had us tagged as a distillery for a long time, as we're the oldest whiskey distillery in Australia, starting in 1992. So I think it's been a long time in the making for us to, well, I guess the culture to change, to get around botanic, like really rare gins and local gins, which has been a wonderful thing. Seeing craft gins popping up all the time, as well as craft whiskies. And so it's a fun thing now that you can walk into any bottle shop anywhere in Australia, and you've got at least 10 distilleries from around that area. Or like, you can go on a drive and just pop into a distillery and try some new things. There's a lot of ones to get around, but it's nice to see that everywhere I've gone, I've found that there's the use of pepperberry in majority of those distilleries, which has been a nice thing.
Definitely. Somebody says, where's the name come from? Why the name?
So 40 Spotted comes from the 40 Spotted pardalote, which is a type of rare and endemic bird found only in the southeast of Tasmania. And I think it was sort of going from, so that brand came along in 2015. And the people that, like, this was just when I first started, and it didn't have anything to do with it, but they sort of decided that 40 Spotted was great because it ties in with the theme of birds, Bill Lark, Lynn Lark, the lark bird. So to go along with the bird, and also to go along with a very Tasmanian-centric idea, is that we really wanted to capture that sort of style of being a rare gin from Tasmania. And what was more rare in the bird sense than the 40 Spotted pardalote, which is type of tiny little bird. It's a beautiful little thing. I've never seen it in the wildlife, and I've been looking a lot. It's quite hard to find, actually. So that was the idea with it, and it's sort of grown from, I think, like the old branding you might be able to see here on my shirt had the 40 Spotted on it. Yeah. And then as of 2 years ago, we decided to change the branding to sort of what you see with the bottles behind me and on your background there as well, Craig. The idea with the upside down bottles is also to signify Tasmania as being from the bottom of the world. Even the ripples identifying, say, the Southern Ocean currents and some topographic of the mountains of Tasmania. So it's all sort of in depth in just being very focused on Tassie, because I think Tassie is pretty cool. I don't know about you guys, but I love it here.
Just cold, huh? That's like, it almost reminds me of being in Scotland.
It just doesn't rain as much as where it does. It doesn't.
Sure.
As it does in
Yeah, unless
Scotland.
you're sort of in that Mount Wellington, is it Mount Wellington side? It's sort of, you can see the weather always hitting the top of that there. But I mean, certainly Hobart's an amazing like city. It's beautiful, you know. It's the way it's split up, the way it's on the water. It's got the mountains in the background, and then you know, it's quite accessible to a lot of different places in Tasmania as well from Hobart. So it's beautiful. You know, it's certainly one place that when you fly in to Hobart, it's such a great view as you fly in. You know, it's sort of it just almost feels like relaxing. And I don't know if anybody's been to Hobart, but the seafood there, like the food in general, was just fantastic. You know, and I always think people used to say, you know, Melbourne's the Australian capital for food and restaurants and stuff. And I always sort of argue the point that, you know what, I think Hobart might be, and it's just it's either undiscovered or people are just trying to keep it quiet. Because everything's so nice and fresh, and just the surroundings as well just make the food taste better. As well as that, I think Adelaide as well is a bit kind of, they're pretty good on the food side as well. But I think Hobart wins. So.
It's just taken time for the chefs to figure it out, to come down and use the produce. All the produce gets sent to Melbourne, and the chefs know what to do with it.
I was just wondering, Craig, did you want me to do a little bit of a tour of the distillery, or you want to hold off on that one for now?
No, I'm happy for you to go. I mean, maybe move on to the next gin, have a quick talk about that one, and then do a bit of a tour of you know, where you work and what it looks like, and yeah.
So we'll move over to the raspberry and rose.
We can't actually call this a gin legally, seeing that it's underneath 38% in ABV, but at 20%, it's I like to call it botanical spirit. I don't know about you, Rick. What do you like to call it?
Yeah, I think that's where we ended up heading to naming wise.
Ivan's actually asked, where do you source your juniper, and is there a reason for 40% and not higher? Is it to bring out more flavors? Because he finds 47 is normally a sweet spot. So why the 40%? Tax?
No, there's a few reasons. Like when I am building a gin, keeping it at 40%. For me, all I have to do is just adjust the amount of botanicals that I'm using to make it work right. There is a bit of a simplistic reason for it as well, and you know, keeping everything at 40% does make it a little bit easier for the marketing and sales and everything. But you know, everything that I do, I make sure that I do try it when I'm blending at, you know, 45, 50, sometimes go to 60, but generally 40%. It seems 40 to 41 is pretty good with what we do, and I think that might relate to the still that we're using, which I'll show you a little bit later on. But yeah, coming back to the raspberry and rose, when it does come to blending and to creating something, I generally draw on experiences, and the raspberry rose for me is, I used to drink Chambord. I don't know if everyone's familiar with that, probably, in my teenage days. There was something about it, and so I just really wanted to replicate it. And it wasn't anything that we were going to put to market, but Chris tried it one day. I was just sitting on the bench. I did a sample up. It was about, I think, 35% or something. And he went nuts for it. And then all of a sudden, the marketing team was on my back saying that we need to release this one. So there was a bit more thought behind it, that we wanted something to be more accessible, less alcohol, for the more conscious drinker. And yeah, but the flavor set works really well with it. And it's not easy to do when you start working with low percentage as well, because alcohol does drive flavor to a point. And being low alcohol, it took a lot of experimenting. This one took about 6 or 7 months to get right, of experimenting. So yeah, really happy with how it turned out. This particular one has a lot of fans in the distillery itself. You know, the guys drinking it every now and then. But yeah, so lots of raspberry, lots of rose on the palate, on the nose. Sorry, grapefruit to give it lift, and then on the palate, very creamy, spiced lollies, and finishing with a little bit of citrus. So the guys at the cellar door, Will, is there like a preference for as a cocktail?
Well, because it's at 20%, we love it in cocktails, as it sits perfectly, you know, in any sort of, and also in marketing wise too. It sits in these great brackets of, it's you know, similar to having Aperol or Campari, like it goes great in spritzes, and it's really good as a day drink because of its low alcohol. So you can have quite a few of them. Or not have quite a few of them, but enjoy them. And so we play around with definitely a cocktail in our gin bar in Hobart, funnily enough called Gin Bar. And it's with sparkling and Davidson plum sort of reduction and shaving on it. And it's just fantastic. We call it the local hero. And it's one of my it's my favorite like knockoff drink to have, because it's just refreshing. It lifts the palate, lets you know on a Friday afternoon that work's done and it's the weekend here. But also, yeah, definitely had a lot of fun with this. More afternoon drinking than summer drinks. It's very summer friendly, this drink, and playful. I like that you bring up your memories all the time with things that remind you of a child. Because when I first got this, the first thing I got off this, and this will probably ruin it for everyone now, but all I could smell was red frogs from the lolly shop. And it still just like puts a big smile on my face whenever you sort of come across set of things that just tick off like a memory sense from a day gone by. But obviously alcohol and children shouldn't mix very much. But you know, it's a sensory thing, and that's what we like to tie ourselves to, and it's all objective. So it's a fun one to play with, because it does put a lot of smiles on people's faces, this gin, because it just sort of perks people up a little bit, gives people a little bit of gusto, and yeah, can also, being at 20%, it's a nice one for the conscious drinker too. So it's a nice price point as well. And a lot of people in bottle shops, I've seen them put it not even in the gin category because of that. So it's an interesting one, but also definitely going along with the trends as well of today. But yeah, we like to drink, we like to be social. It's what we do as human beings, but at least you don't need to be completely annihilated.
This one's quite strange as well, whereas I feel in the nose it's like it smells like it's going to be sweet and it's going to be like a liqueur, but then when you drink it, like you said, it's fresh. Like it's actually, the sweetness isn't dominant, and it's actually, again, like it's for the fact that a lot of people now are sugar conscious as well. It's actually a really good drink for that, as well as being lower alcohol, etc. And it just sort of seems to be a little bit more versatile of, you know, all those little bits and pieces. But interesting you said about the childhood. I don't know if Phil will remember this more than anybody else here, but I when I was a kid, they used to get He-Man. You know, remember He-Man, the Masters of the Universe, in a cartoon, and they used to bring out these little He-Man jellies. And you used to peel them back, you know, and there'd be a He-Man jelly in there. And that's exactly what it reminded me of, this He-Man jelly, you know, and just the smell of it straight away was like that. And it's like, brings you back to your childhood, and you can't stop smelling it because of that. You know, so it's quite funny. Yeah, it's good.
I don't remember that because you're way older than I am. I actually don't remember the He-Man. I loved He-Man, but I don't remember the sweets.
Oh, they were brilliant. They were good. Yeah, at the garage, 10p.
Yeah,
there'd be £6 or £12 now for one of them.
Yeah, probably.
That's that. Yeah, wonderful. Do you want to take us a walk through now?
Yeah. I'll just attach here. So a little tour of the distillery. Here we go. Probably worth starting off. I might actually start with the process. Do that. So any time we're about to do start on a new release, it's generally a mixture of marketing and you know, what kind of product, because we need a sort of a scope to adhere to. But other than that, it's kind of flavor wise, I get to choose whatever I want to do. And a big part of what that involves is I spend a lot of time around this little thing. So it's a 2-litre glass still. And so I'll get a lot of different botanicals in, distill them, macerate them. So that's just putting it in alcohol, and for a period of time. And by the end of a couple of weeks, I'll end up with I don't know if you can see this very well, but there's a library of botanicals. And so with the library of botanicals, I'll actually go through and do taste or go through a sensory and smell each one. 90% of what I do is with the nose, checking what I want to use for the future product. And then I'll select a few, and then it's pretty much just putting them in front of me and then doing small blended samples. That can take anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months to get that right. And then from there, we end up upscaling up to the gin still, which does all our work. So I'll see if I can get you. Here's the nicely polished gin still.
In a still that we have.
Yeah. So this is 900 litres. This was designed and made by, see if I can get this. There we go. Still Smiths in Tasmania. So 100% Tasmanian product. And you can see on the door itself, there's a indent of the 40 spotted pardalote. But the process for distillation, we, if I can open the door. So it's basically putting in the spirit into the pot with alcohol, the spirit with water. We put in our botanicals. So for example, the classic gin, it'll be the juniper berries, coriander, some ruby grapefruit, and then bergamot as well. And then during distillation, the vapors will come up, will go through the swan neck up the top here, and then go down into what we call a basket or a vapor infuser. Actually, I might go around so you can see it. This is pretty cool. The design itself is pretty simple, but it's important. The fact that it's such a squat, what we call a squat still, like in other distilleries, they might be really tall, but in the spirit that we've designed, we want it to be a lot more heavier, a lot more flavoursome, which I think speaks a lot more to the Australian palate. We want flavouring what we make. So anyway, this is the basket. So a certain amount of botanicals will go in here, more of the delicate ones like kaffir lime, lemon peel, ginger. We also put frankincense in there. And then from there, it goes up through into a condenser. Sorry if anyone's getting motion sickness there. In through the condenser, and then generally we have a large vat sitting here, which we break down with fresh Tasmanian water. So that's pretty much the process. That was a really quick example. Yeah, and it takes anywhere from, like I said, a couple of weeks to, it can take maybe, I don't know, 9 months for the final product to actually hit the shelf, which is a pretty quick turnaround. Especially with products like the raspberry and rose and the wild rose, because we have to do shelf testing, stability testing, and all that sort of stuff. So that's a whole other part to it. But yeah, it's basically just myself, and I do bounce a lot of ideas off Chris, who's one of the heads, or is a spirit technologist now for Lark. But yeah, a lot of good fun. Actually, I'll get, if I've got a bit more time, I'll show you to the rest of the distillery, the column still, which is now off, fortunately, because it's quite loud. I know it's still running. You can probably hear that. Sounds like a train. So this is what we call a column still. Hopefully you can see that in there. Quite tall. This is where spirits get cleaned before either being put into a cask or potentially making gin with. So it generally starts off in the wash back there. First through the first column, and then go through the top, down the bottom of the second column, and then again out into a large IBC. Hopefully you guys heard that. Sorry if you didn't, it is pretty loud in there.
What's the alcohol? What percentage is the alcohol when it comes out of there?
Yeah, it generally comes out about 82, I think, is for the column still. For the gin still, it ranges. Well, it starts coming out at about 82, and we work it down to about 75%. And then I find after that, generally with every gin that I've made, it draws too many heavy elements from the juniper. So we generally cut always at 75%. Do
you put any of them in a barrel to like?
For the gin?
Yeah, to age then.
Oh, so the second gin I did make was a I've got a bottle. Hang on a second, just 1 second.
I think I know what he's going to bring and show you guys. This is my favorite gin of all time.
You unfortunately can't get this on you anymore, but
you're going to do a special batch just for us.
Yeah.
If you buy enough, Craig, we will.
That's right.
It's actually won World Gin Award for the Australian League. This was a whiskey inspired gin. We called it Ginski.
Ginski.
A lot of sweet tones. We used I think this was bourbon casks.
Yeah.
Ex-Lark bourbon casks. So
we had 12 barrels of, I believe, Buffalo Trace sent over for it.
Yep.
And yeah, we put the gin in there for, I think it was like, was it 4 months?
Yeah, it was a pretty quick settling period in the maturing period in the cask, and then then bottled. It was pretty amazing. Like, it's a shame we didn't follow up and continue doing it, but maybe in the future we'll start doing more cask experiments again. That's one of the perks of my job. I can experiment with whatever I want and see what works, what doesn't.
One of my favorite things is whenever someone goes in for a gin, like a distilling day with Rick, he asks them to bring in a botanical of their choice. And like, there's nothing under the sun that, like, the weirder the better in essence. And he'll make a distillate out of it and taste it. And sometimes it's great and interesting. Sometimes it's not so great. Do you have a preferred one, Rick?
I had one of the staff that works here. She ended up bringing in onions. Was it pickled onions? And we chucked it through the still. And at first it was really interesting, but the next day it was just smelling like farts. So yeah, we didn't run with that one. But yeah, I'm always surprised because not every botanical that you smell in your hand or that you taste when you distill it can be completely different. And some it just blow my mind how amazing they can be, especially after you let it rest for a period. Because when I first started doing this role, I was putting a whole heap of botanicals through the 2-litre still, and I kept chucking them out thinking they were no good, but all I had to do was give it a resting period, like a week or so, and then it just completely settle out and become its own thing. So a lot of learning involved with the role and experimenting.
So Rick, see, you know how you said you use some ginger?
Yep.
What would it be like doing a really ginger heavy gin? Like, is it right at the forefront of the palate?
We do actually do separate distillates for our gin bar for the gin blending sessions, and ginger is one of those distillations, and I love ginger, so
Yes.
it's actually quite a good botanical to distill. But you have to make sure that it's really clean because the peel, the ginger peel, can give a lot of off notes. So again, it's a lot of care taking into each botanical and making sure that you prep it right before extracting flavors.
Awesome.
Brilliant. Sounds great. Do you want to lead us on to the next gin?
Yeah. So we got next up is the citrus. Is that? Yep.
Citrus and pepperberry.
I think maybe unanimously one of the favorites for all of us. It's got a beautiful gin to work with in the bar. When this came out, it got us all very excited to have something that wasn't overly sweet, that was more of a contemporary style, but with that sweet, a lot of that sweet citrus notes. It was really fun. And I know you had a good time making this one there, Rick.
Yeah. So early days with this one, I was fortunate enough to spend some time with some Indigenous people doing forage expeditions and that sort of thing. And I came across Oyster Bay pine. Don't unfortunately have any. Actually, I might. Just one second.
Rick's laboratory's got everything in it.
That sounds like Aladdin's cave in there, like a treasure trove of cool stuff.
Yeah.
I think what happens is when you go to Hobart, right, Rick's just like foraging around at the side of the road on your way from the airport.
It's often the case. Yeah.
You know what? You might joke about that, but we went
It's
to
true.
Cradle Mountain for a holiday last week, and my partner turned around and I'm there sniffing trees and moss. It's just one of the things I do. I love it. Like every tree that I was walking past had a different smell. Like one was almost briny, another one was cypress, another one was just a really fresh what's the word, pector, just a really fresh smell. But anyway, the Oyster Bay pine, this is actually a small branch of it. So again, native to Tasmania. It was an amazing botanical as soon as I smelt it. Traditionally, they would have just brewed tea with it. It just made an amazing bridge between juniper and pine and the citrus. And I think that's why the citrus gin works so well on its own. And when people ask me which is my favorite gin, I actually generally tend to lean towards this is my child, my favorite child.
It's funny you say that, Rick. When I used to work for Bruichladdich, we were over at Bruichladdich, a team of us from Australia, and the guy that makes botanist gin, James, took us out, and he's been through different botanicals, and he's going, "Oh, picks." They have them all over the island, but he generally gets stuff from anywhere. And we're picking stuff at the side of the distillery, and he just goes, "Don't touch that!" I'm like, "Oh, Christ, why not?" He goes, "That will kill you." And I'm like, "That will kill you?" I'm like, "What do you mean it will kill you?" I said, "Children walk past here." He goes, "That's deadly, that one." And I'm like, "This guy's obsessed with botanicals." And we're like, absolutely obsessed. And it's funny you saying, it just reminded me when you say you're out sniffing trees. I mean, I'll never look at you the same way again, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And you're right, to your point, you do have to be careful because what you're doing in a still, you're concentrating compounds. So you have to be very cautious on what you're putting in there. Like I used to, I have played around with, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, cinchona bark, which is one of the constituents in tonic. And I made a concentrate and I took a sample, I think it was in the morning, and within an hour I was sweating and feeling very unwell. So yeah, never do that again.
You need Jill with you. You need Jillian with you. She seems to know what to pick and what not to pick.
Yeah. And this is why we seek external advice on some botanicals that we don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of fun, a lot of learning.
This one's yeah, it's like it's got a bit more of a kick to it. It's got a bit more flavor push. You feel the alcohol stronger. There's a slight, spice in the back of the throat sort of thing as it finishes. So I think for me, like so far, this has got the bigger flavor. So being a whiskey drinker, like I'm more drawn to this one already. Definitely.
Yeah.
And imagine it would go well. What would it go well as a garnish, and what would go well as a tonic or a soda with this? Would you say? Because a lot of people now are, especially on us, are saying soda. They'd rather have a soda with this.
I think soda goes amazingly with this. And orange as a garnish, fresh slice of orange in there, because for me, even drinking the spirit just as it is, I think of it just reminds me of biting into a freshly squeezed orange. Fresh orange, you just get so much of that juice coming through. And yeah, soda's fantastic. Tonic wise, dry tonic goes great with it as well. So like your your Mediterranean, if you're doing Fever Tree, or the Cappy dry is really good. Something that's like, because it's got all those sweet flavors that you want. So you don't need to add any tonic that has a lot of sugar in it already.
Yeah, I'm not sure if everybody knows, but I guess Fever Tree a lot of people know about. I think you get it in Dan Murphy, all that sort of stuff. But I don't know if anybody knows, if they drink soda water, Strange Love. There's a brand called Strange Love. They do beautiful soda. They do like a cucumber soda, a yuzu soda, and they do a mandarin soda as well. So they'd go so well with local gins as well, because they're a local company. They're actually all of their stuff. Like it was a Fever Tree's made in the UK, whereas Strange Love's made in Australia. So, and they really, really experiment with things like pepperberry and all that sort of thing. So they are really good to have with your gin here, because they're just such they're local, they know what they're dealing with. But yeah, some good products out there now.
I'd recommend the mandarin one. I've tried that together, because I get mandarin on the nose of this, and yeah, it goes that soda goes fantastic with this gin.
Yeah, you're right with the orange. Yeah, so yeah, good with orange.
So we even going back to what you were saying about foraging. There was a big festival here a few years ago called January, and we were doing like a big opening to the festival with the citrus gin, because that was the first year we'd just started making it. We had all these cute little pins made up that we were wearing. Everything was orange, and we stopped on the way. Like I was there, and I drove by on the way to the venue, and there's fennel that just grows on the side of the road here in Hobart. And so I pulled over and snipped some fennel, and we was able to garnish a little bit of fennel in there, just because we thought the green looked really good as well, because we had these trees with oranges all over the place. So just to bring a bit of that green and orange back into it. So yeah, we're pretty resourceful here and accessible to things that go well in gin, that's for sure.
I think it's great that you can do that, because like immediately for somebody who doesn't drink gin as often as some other spirits, etc., was that I'm always tending to go to citrus, and it'd be really good to understand more about, well, I think citrus can be forgiving with any gin. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that finding the right herb to go with your gin would be a real technique, and actually finding, so taking the classic and then saying, putting a bit of fennel with it or something like that and going, wow, that's amazing. I really, really like that combination. So it'd be good to know more about that, is how can I not use citrus and use more sort of floral effect to bring out my gin.
It's a good point, that too. And like you'll know a good cocktail bar with what they garnish on a cocktail. If you taste something that's like, I'm getting sweet, I'm getting savory, but then they'll put like a wooded note as a garnish, or like they're just trying to bring in a different layer. And so it's something like if you get a very sweet thing, it's nice to put something else just as like another evolve it a bit more. So it's got a little bit more depth to it. So yes, finding the right spice note's great. It's good to experiment. Just do what Rick does, but on a micro scale.
That's right. Yeah, like train your palate. When we spoke to the Edinburgh gin guys, they're saying that in the UK now, at a bar they would do gin and tonic, and what they would do is they would pour the gin, put ice in it, put the tonic in it, and then put a garnish in it, and then give you it. Now, most of the places in the UK are pouring the gin with no ice, putting the ice on the side, the garnish on the side, and giving you a bottle of tonic. Because a lot of people are going, I just want to taste the gin, thanks. I don't want all the other stuff with it. So they're giving you the opportunity to do that and trial it more. But then again, a standard drink over there is 35 ml, not not the 30 ml that we get here.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone on this tonight's in Canberra, or if you ever get a chance to go to Canberra, but I'm not sure if they're doing it just now. There's a great restaurant there called Akiba. They do amazing food and amazing drinks. But what they at times do is they've got a cart and they put gin on the cart, and then they'll have multiple garnishes, and they'll take the cart up to customers who are sitting and say, would you like to, buy a gin, and you can make up your own drink as you want it here. So it's sodas and tonics and different ones and a bunch of different garnishes, and they can just make up their own garnish. So what a great idea, more bars should do something like that to let the consumer make up their own mind how they want to drink it. But if you're ever in Canberra, I'd absolutely recommend jumping into Akiba.
Yeah, definitely. Food and drink there is fantastic.
Yeah.
Brilliant. It's a great place to go during Canberra. Yeah. Wonderful. Move on to the next one, I think. We're on to the Wild Rose.
Sure.
Happy to take any questions as well. If anyone wants to bring up any tasting notes that they're getting or any childhood memories that you're picking up.
That is one of the things, like, the most enjoyable part is when I'm distilling things. There will be things that are distill, and all of a sudden it'll just ping my memory back to childhood memories, doing things, smelling things, and it's really weird and interesting to be able to do that, just distilling a few different botanicals.
Would you say that you had a childhood memory about this one, Rick? The Wild Rose?
Yep. I get a bit of slack for this one because, so this particular one, we wanted to make a summer drink. For me, summer growing up where I grew up in Victoria, was always being at the local swimming pool out in the sun, and the one of very few treats that we could get at the candy bar there was musk sticks. I don't know if anyone knows or remembers what musk sticks are, but it's basically just a rose candy, sort of a soft chew. But that was kind of the inspiration for this. So tons of rose, and just being poolside.
Yeah, heaps of rose on this nose. Very sweet. I think like when Rick did an iteration of this years ago called just the summer drink gin. It was a pink gin. And I used to get a lot of that sort of like Turkish delight sort of flavors on the nose, and it's just heaps of that rose water coming through. But you've worked it into a really, really like easy drinking gin now that's wonderfully versatile. And there's just some avid fans that would just non-stop go for this every single day. So it's pretty cool. Like I think we ran out of stock for a little bit, and then the demand was so high that we had to bring it back in. Then Rick tinkered with the recipe a little bit and gave us what we have today, which is a nice pink gin.
Mm. This one works well building cocktails, I think, and the gin bar. This is a favourite for theirs to build with, just because it is quite a heavy gin. Nowhere near as heavy as the first time we released it as a summer gin. So I did dial it back a lot, added more citrus into it to give it a bit more complexity. But really happy with it. It's
This
memories.
might sound like a silly question, Rick, but I'm assuming it's all natural colours, all natural. There's nothing added.
So with this particular one, I tried to colour with hibiscus flower and a few other natural extracts, but what ended up happening is as soon as it's on the shelf, it starts the colour oxidizes in the bottle. So with this release, we did have to use a natural form of colouring that we buy in that's already shelf stable. But when we talk about colouring, we're adding for this one, it was I think it's about 6 grams of color per 1,000 liters of spirit. So you know, you're going to get less than a single candy for sure.
I think I'm enjoying this one. Jill said like it's like musk light lifesavers. A bit of musk in there as well. Yeah. Certainly, I find this one quite floral.
Yeah, very much so. There's with this one as well, like orange goes well, but this is another fun one for in the bar. Like you can garnish with so many different things with this one, and it takes you on a different journey every time. Mm-hmm. So there's times where we've put like wooded herbs being in there, and you know, even the citrus obviously goes in there sometimes if people want something extra sweet. So this is a good one to even ask, like, how sweet do you want it? And you know, bring in other flavors. But I even get a lot of that floral note too. You're right, Craig. Rick, am I right? Was it bergamot that was in this one as well?
Yeah, there's also a small amount of bergamot. Yep. Bergamot just seems to be one of those botanicals, the same as a pepperberry. I just love to use it in different gins. It just seems to, like when building a gin, it's, how do I explain it? It's almost kind of like music to me. You know, you can't just have a band with a drummer or a singer. You have to have different components to it, and then when you put it all together, the band might be, you know, it might be thrash or it might be classic. That's probably the best way that I can think of when I'm tasting gin and putting them together.
Are you drunk by 7 a.m.?
Yeah. Some days, you know, I'll be honest. No, I generally try. I have to make sure that I do all my blending before lunchtime, because once the guys fire up the lunchroom here, there's all the aroma. There's like 30 people working here on any given day. They'll fire up in the lunchroom, and you know, you get all these aromas of garlics and delicious meals. I can't smell anything by that point, so I have to generally do it early is best.
Yeah. Even the distilleries in Scotland, they all say, you know, they get in there quite early in the morning and they go through things, and it's mostly nosing, smelling, you know, getting
exactly
than actually tasting most of the time. But the guy or the gentleman that works at Robert Fleming that works at Tomintoul says you can go through 100 whiskies in the first 2 hours. It's like, oh geez. Yeah. After the second one, I wouldn't be able to smell anything else, I don't think. But amazing. It's just fine tuning your nose to this. Oh, it's amazing.
It's funny, Craig, when someone like if it's Chris Thompson, I had Distiller for whiskey at like if he sort of does nosing all of these barrels and tasting all these barrels, he'll go through like 100. Sometimes he'll just come in and be like, just give me I just need a lager.
Is that right? Yeah.
Something like I just need to just restart everything. I don't want any taste.
Just something to clear up. What's actually something that, and I've just thought about there, that interests me with gin is that you know, there was a time with whiskey that I visited the Glencairn distillery, and we import Glencairn for Australia. And when we were there, the guy said, "I've got 2 whiskies for you. You sell our stuff, so you should know what they are." And one was just like this whiskey at room temperature. And I tasted it and I said, "Oh, that's great. You know, it's the 15-year-old Glencairn." "Yep, that's right. Well done. What's the next one?" Tasted it and it was cooler. So then got my wife to taste it. She's tasting it and don't really know what it is. We felt just terrible because we should know what everything is. And they said, "No, we give up." And the guy said to us, "It's the 15. It's the same one." Said, "This one here is at 4 degrees. It's out the fridge." You know, so it's a completely different object. If you were to not add ice to gin and to heat it, would you get a different? How much more of a different experience would you get? You know?
Completely different. Yeah, like even with the classic, if you warm it up with your hands, give it a smell, and then drop in ice, ice block, give it a smell, a few seconds later, it's going to be completely different. Because the oils, the interaction with the oils and the alcohol, some will end up not evaporating, so it won't get into the top of the glass. And then, you know, we take all of that into consideration when we're building gins as well. Like when I'm trying gins with Chris here, we will always go through a process of trying it as it is, and then with ice, and then with tonic, and then we'll go back, try it at different strengths. I think another interesting thing and a sort of a journey I'm undertaking this year is playing a lot more around different aspects, such as the amount of acid in gins, and pH levels, and sugar content, and how it interplays with each other on your palate. It's amazing. Like, you could drop this, just the tiniest amount of like saline solution into it, and it just completely change it. Yeah, and then ABV. So yeah, you can really take drinks anywhere. It just got to be patient with it.
Yeah.
In the case, when I walk in, you'll have the same drink, but in 8 different glasses with the lids on. And you and Sylvia, one of the distillers who just left Lark not long ago, they'd always be there, and I'd always get excited because I'd walk in and I'd see like Rick and Sylvia's eyes light up and be like, "Want to taste some stuff?" And I was, of course, yes. And so it's always like, oh, this is this temperature, that's got a little bit of soda in it, that's got tonic in it. And it's always like a fun process to see them, heads down, talking about which one they like the most. And it's a cool process to go through to find out what gets released. There's a lot of back and forth in the process before you get the spirit actually in bottles and on shelves.
Yeah, just good time. Yeah, big process, big job for everybody, definitely. And I think obviously with the size of Lark now, I guess a lot of competitiveness out there. Everybody's sort of looking to 40 Spotted, looking to Lark, etc. And sort of setting the tone in a lot of these parts of the industry now. So it's good. You've done well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I'm excited about the bush honey. Can we move on to that one?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm interested to see how sweet this is.
This was one of those ones that going just like good segue from what we were just talking about, actually, because I think every time I went out there, Rick had a different type of honey, and the differences between every single one of them was just so drastic. I feel like this was quite a hard one for you to make, Rick.
Yeah. Finding a botanical and wanting to work with it is great, but then when it comes down to the crux of actually trying to extract flavor and aroma in the way that you want, and that's a good representation of that botanical is pretty hard. And with this honey gin, like I said, there was at least 12 different honeys, local honeys, that I was experimenting with, and then there was another 20 more from the mainland. But fortunately, we settled on a local producer, literally just up the road, of leatherwood honey. It was the only honey that would carry across aroma through our process, and that's sort of what brings you to the bush honey. And it might be worth mentioning the other botanical that I really had fun playing with in this one is the rooibos, which is not actually Australian. It is from Africa, but dried rooibos is generally drank as a tea, but it just seemed to lend so well to the leatherwood honey, and that's why I really wanted to use it in this one. Plus star anise and coriander. This is again, we wanted to avoid it being super sweet, so we only use the smallest amount, but I think it works well and it's balanced, and you can still call it a gin. It's not a liqueur by any means.
Yeah, absolutely. I always find that it goes like so floral, like sweet floral sweet again, or floral sweet floral, like it just sort of interacts with each other I love the way that this really evaporates so nicely and is really rounded as this actual spirit drunk by itself. And then it's one of those interesting ones for cocktail makers. This became a bit of a fan favorite for people just because it was different. Because, you know, people in mixology and whatnot, they really like to use just interesting flavors and new flavors. So it's been fun to see how creative people have been with this type of gin, especially because it's not like in your face punchy sweet like you'd imagine honey to be. Like, I think you've balanced that so incredibly well that it's been versatile, and in cocktails you wouldn't expect there to be a honey element in it. So in some more of a like the drier sort of bitter style cocktails, there's that little hit, just like, even if it's just like a bit of a float of it on top. So it's an interesting gin to have, and yeah, it's just confusing for a lot of people too, watching people's reactions when they try it.
I think this one actually works well, like Craig, what you mentioned about using herbs, you know, rosemary or a few of those, maybe sage. They would work really well in a cocktail for this one.
Definitely. I mean, of all the gins that you do, this is my favorite. I was excited to get to this one because I wanted to do a cocktail with this one, and I thought, I'm just not going to do it justice. Like you said, you know, you really got to put something with this that's a bit creative. And I mean, and when I first went to this one, it was almost like it reminded me of Deep Heat. You know, that Deep Heat rum?
Yeah.
That going into a changing room, a footy changing room or a soccer changing room, and that was the smell. You could smell everybody of this. Love them. And that was just the first smell. And I thought, how's that nice? You know, I didn't understand why it was nice. But then all these beautiful kind of earthy, you know, that honey kind of flavor starting to come through a bit and mix in with each other. And I thought, oh, this is amazing. Like the nose on this just keeps changing around a bit. And then you drink it. And then when you go back to the nose again, all you're smelling then is just honey, you know, like it's just this, wow, you know, and it opens up again. So yeah, it's just really good how it's just so diverse. And like you said, now putting herbs with it is, yeah. Like somebody, Anthony's just said, definitely a straight sipper. And I even said, this is my new dry cough medicine.
I love that, Anthony.
But yeah, definitely a straight sipper. Like, yeah, or like I said, trying it in somebody who can do a cocktail and do it justice, you know, like really do something really funky and, you know, really bring out those flavors with their cocktail. That because I don't know if anybody knows at the moment, but we tend to follow trends from the US. That's where sort of Australia leads itself a lot of the time. And in the US, they would have wine lists when you go out for dinner. So lots of different wine lists, and they would match wines to what is actually what's on the menu. In America right now, they've scrapped the wine lists. And what they're doing right now is that they are bringing out cocktail lists, and they're trying to become really creative with cocktails and trying to match them with food. And this is great, you know, and it's something like this is what's going to help that along. You know, the other stuff's nice and fresh, you know, it's a good start or an end to a meal, etc. This is the one that you want with a dish, you know, and go, what can you experiment, what can you eat with this as well? And a lot of people ask us about whiskey and, well, what can you match with whiskey? But with gin, this is where I think gin's going to go more, you know, and this is perfect, this one for that. So really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
So how does this rate with the people so far? Are we is this on the top, or does some people have some other favourites?
Anybody want to share that tasting?
Got one more to go.
I do like the citrus and pepperberry, but the bush honey is lovely.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. The citrus and pepperberry again was good because it kind of had this explosion of flavor, I thought, like in the palate, and you know, and it's I think it still stands out amongst all six as the bigger and bolder flavor. Yeah.
You know, I think the beauty of it is if you have one SKU of a product, you kind of limit yourself to people either like it or they don't. But just looking at the comments, you know, people love either the citrus and pepper with the bush honey, the wild rose is their favorite. That's the beauty of because not everyone's going to love the same product, the same flavour profile. We all like different tastes and flavours. It's great to see people going, well, I love that one more than that one. Well, that's great. That means that's the one for you, kind of thing, or the two for you, whatever it happens to be. But yeah, that's probably my joint second favourite with the one we've still to go to, Bush Honey and the last one.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get more.
Get into the last one because Phil had a drink of it at the start, and now I'm dying to taste it.
Yeah, I thought I'd put it in a wine glass. Whoops, not wine, sorry.
And the wine glass is empty.
Yeah, not quite.
Let's head into the last one so we can then rate these gins of what our preference was. This one's the Pinot Noir.
I guess those of you that have been to Tasmania or are big wine fans, you'd know that our best grape variety for reds in Tasmania is Pinot Noirs. Quite well known for them. We also share a road, like we share, a dirt road with a famous vineyard called Frogmore Creek that make beautiful Pinot Noirs. I think, Rick, you had a really good time with this because it was just vintage about a month or two before we started, evolving this wine, wine-based gin. So you had a good few 10 months there of sampling Pinot Noirs, I think. I wasn't really invited to that party.
Oh no, I was working hard. Yeah. No, I did. I think the story behind this particular one. Like again, drawing on experiences growing up. One of my best mates had a vineyard in Victoria, or his parents had a vineyard, and I just remember growing up and running through grapevines and eating grapes off the vines and helping out at the vineyard. So I always wanted to do something with Pinot or with grapes in general, and so marketing thought. This would be a great opportunity to show our expression of Pinot gin, which is Pinot Noir, which Tasmanian is really well known for. And then so what happened is I had a couple of weeks before vintage was finished, and I had to work really fast, and then we ended up scrapping the idea until the next year. So this is 3 years ago now.
Yep.
So this is the second release. And yeah, it's been a long journey. It's, again, with any product, there's a lot of experimenting and making sure that everything's right before we release it. This particular one, we ended up asking the guys up at Frogmore, whether they could do a few different batches for us with regards to experimentation. So we purchased, a couple of tons of Pinot grapes, and we did some was just macerated straight with a gin distillate, which was specifically done for this, which had juniper berries and a whole heap of fragrant spices. And so that was macerated. In another vessel we had, some was fermented. Some of the grapes fermented out, as they traditionally would have done for the Pinot Noir. And then another vat, we did 50-50. And then we ended up blending them together and finding the one that did the best was just doing a fermentation for a period of time, and then putting the gin spirit on top of the grape spirit and the must. And it was important to have the must in there, which is the grapes and the stalks, so we could extract some more tannin. It'll help bring it a bit more structure into the product. And then after that, we made a few more adjustments with extra distillates, and yeah, this is the product. I think it works really good over just ice. Not so much with tonic. this is probably the only product I would suggest not to drink with tonic. Maybe a little bit of soda, but yeah, definitely a after dinner treat.
Yeah, great. Or even before dinner or during dinner. It's the first time we had this. Myself and my girlfriend Niall, who's our head of hospitality, we just were drinking it like a chilled red. We put it in like because of it being on ice, and next thing you know, we'd forgotten that it was 40% and not 14%, and it was sort of creeps up on you. But that's how delicious it was. We just kept going back to it and drinking like we forgot we were drinking gin. But it is just such a beautiful, beautiful gin in that. But I also like that the spice notes come through in the back end. You get a bit of that anise as well. It's a really fun one to play with as well in cocktails. But yeah, I'd recommend just on ice or even straight as it is like this. It's pretty delicious too.
I force every person that comes into my house, they must have a taste of this, which is why my bottle's got that much left in it. But, I'm clearly a heathen, Rick, because I love it straight, but I filled a wine glass, a good dollop of this, and two 200 ml, so 400 ml of tonic, and I loved it. So I'm clearly not the target market for the correct way of drinking. I didn't it. It was absolutely beautiful.
A glass of it certainly makes your cheeks go red.
I'm already red, being slightly older than you, Craig.
Why? Just I've got the bottle in front of me, and Phil's just held up the bottle. Like, why the upside down effect on the bottle? Who can tell me why you changed to that effect? What was the?
So that one was pretty much because our original bottle, everyone else became too creative. And our bottle from 2015 just looked really dull. And it was one of those non-proprietary bottles that everyone else, once they started distilling gin, they would like, and this happened even with whiskey, they'd just look to people like Lark, because we'd been around for so long, and they'd go, hey, where do you get your bottles from? And we're like, oh, we get them from these guys. And so a lot of people used to use the same exact bottles as us for their whiskeys or gins or vodkas, whatever they're making. And so it sort of just like got looked beyond too. Like I loved the logo, I loved the design, but the bottle was the one thing that really just sort of kept us held back, even though, you know, by the time say the other big gin distilleries around, like your Four Pillars and Archie Rose and things like that, they were looking at us, they'd learn from us, there'd be ex-distillers from Lark even, and then all of a sudden they would have these great marketing and great designs out there, and we'd just sort of be like, you'd look at the three of them and, you know, if you're just buying off, you know, judging a book by its cover, you just grab that one. So they sort of went to umming and ahhing about it, about changing, we wanted to change the bottles, and then we're umming and ahhing about the style and what's going to separate us on the shelves. And that's where the idea of the upside down bottle came, just to sort of represent Tasmania being up on the bottom of the world. And that was where the brand was going to be pushing as well, from the bottom of the world, because you know, we're in the very bottom of Tasmania too. So that was the sort of the idea behind there, and they tested it all out. And I guess it definitely, regardless of whether you like it or not, it's definitely a conversation starter, which is cool, and it does drag your attention away from the completely saturated industry that we have now in gins with bottles, as you know, Craig. So that was sort of the main push for it. But at the end of the day, when people recognised the word 40 spotted, they knew the liquid was always good in there as well. And the bottles, yeah, they definitely said, oh, I like them.
Well, are you able to tell us a wee bit about the sustainability with regard to like the bottle and the bottle cap and stuff?
Yes. The idea, like, so we're the first certified carbon neutral distillery in Australia. And a lot of it comes down to sort of these initiatives of waste management at the distillery and reusing certain aspects of things. With the bottles alone, going to where we went with proprietary bottles like this, we knew that the glass maker they were using a sort of less glass for the production, so less carbon footprint coming out of there. But we also just started this gin activation for all the on-premises. So we actually do a refill gin activation where we send 5-litre refill containers of the liquid to the bars, and then they just top up the bottles. So then it works really well for us. You know, bottle shops, they've got the bottles, but bars, they've only got one bottle. And so that's where, for us, it really helps out with the environmental side of it all. We're still working constantly because we always want to make our carbon footprint less and less and less. At the moment, we're buying some offset credits, but every year we're coming down. But the idea is that we'll have the completely recyclable, everything reusable, and also, if hopefully in the future with the ideas of our new location out in Pontville, be carbon positive, which would be great. So then we'll be able to bring back more into the to the environment and push it out. So it's all good question, Phil. But,
that's awesome. My understanding as well was that the actual kind of wide plastic lid of the 40 Spotty was completely recyclable as well. Which
yes, yeah, it is. Yeah.
Which, considering the environment we have, because we were looking at, my wife loves to like not throw rubbish out, and if I ever come home with a plastic bag for something, it's not worth it for me. So I don't do that. But when I read the fact that we have a completely recyclable lid, it makes it so much easier to understand what you can do with the bottle, because you're not adding any damage to the environment or anything like that. And our bottle seems to hit all those. But outside of having fantastic liquid, it's really good for the environment at the same time.
Definitely important to do that. We went with these bags for everybody, because if you take the lid off and you take the little plastic cap off, you can put them in your recycle bin at home. The bags, however, are not recyclable in your home bin, but any supermarket in the country, including IGA, you can drop these plastic bags into, and then they get recycled again. And then what we tried to do is we moved away from glass, because glass gets broken. We had to resend to customers. We have to send it in a big box as well, and it's more space. Whereas an envelope, just full of little bags, is less impact on the environment. You know, we're not sending you anything else but these, and we're hoping that everything inside that envelope can be recycled. You know, so it's extremely important now to look at that every time and what your impact is. And then even at that, if you don't have a supermarket near you, we're going to be calling for these soon, where you know, like save them up over a year or 2 years and just send them back to us, and we'll recycle them for you. You know, do something like that, because like I said, it's important. You know, and it's extremely important not to come home with a plastic bag, Phil. I always forget to go to the supermarket though with a Hessian bag. I always walk into the supermarket and think I must have about 20 in the car, and I always forget to take them with me. You end up at the counter at the end going, I've got to buy a bag. Or you're trying to carry 20 objects out to the car. Yeah, it's good. It's definitely good that again, you know, I think that whole, I've always wondered why not more distilleries don't do the whole you know, we'll top you up, you know, idea than we'll send you a new bottle. I've never understood why that's not the case. You know, I know in France there's a lot of that with wine, where it's, you know, just walk into local shop and fill it up and take it back to the bar, etc. Whereas there's just an awful lot of waste of plastic and glass everywhere. Definitely good.
I'll tell you what, if it was up to me, Craig, we'd just be selling those like a boxed wine for the gin.
There's nothing wrong with them either. That's it. You know, like those, what do we call them here? Goon bags. Is that the?
Yeah, goon bag. That's it.
Goon bag. Yeah. Well, I have actually seen somebody drop a goon bag in a train and try to suck it up through a straw. It was the highlight. It's been the highlight of my life in Australia. But the goon bag, it's a great idea, and like again, a lot of it's recyclable now. You know, there's a small company, is it Diageo? They've got a brand called Johnny Walker. If you've not heard of it before, next year Johnny Walker will bring out all their bottles will be recyclable paper. So no more glass from Johnny Walker. Every bottle will come out as recyclable paper bottles. which is going to be so interesting.
Yeah.
How have they done it? You know, what is it going to look like? Brilliant.
I think it'd be great because you know, you need the big plays to start that sort of a trend.
Yeah.
Then everyone else is just going to want to copy. So I think that only good can come from that.
Yeah, I think so as well. Yeah, it's fantastic.
I think the amazing thing about Lark as well and 40 Spotted is they've started a trend, and you know they've been able to, you know, have this first certified carbon neutral distiller in Australia. That's really, really important to people now. It's a major focus. I suppose from a consumer point of view, it probably doesn't matter if they don't like the liquor route. Thankfully, the product is absolutely fantastic as well. So we've managed to get something that really suits the environment, and we've got some great products at the same time. So happy days for everyone.
Definitely does. Yeah. The next one we're going to go into here is my creation now. What was it? I was given a few cocktails with the guys at the distillery, and I decided to go with the rose petal martini. So I liked the rose petal gin, and I thought I didn't want to try the bush honey. I thought that the bush honey was for experts, and I'm certainly not an expert at mixing cocktails. I'm an expert at drinking.
These knees, that's delicious.
So I went with wild rose gin, aperitif wine, and some orange bitters. So if you do have ice, I'd suggest that you put this one on ice. It is better with a little bit of ice in there. I didn't have any rose petals to garnish it with, but it's probably good if you do have anything floral to garnish this with. It's probably good to do that. But it is a rose petal martini you've got as a cocktail. It was just to show you, just you know, it is quite easy to put a cocktail together. There's some great recipes, I think, on the 40 Spotted website, and you can just go in there and you can just try your own stuff out. You don't need too many ingredients. I try to use like the best of the ingredients to really give you a really good representation of the gin and what you can do. And the orange bitters is like made locally in Australia, and it's extremely expensive orange bitters. hopefully it's done justice to the gin. But I really wanted to bring that together for you. So hopefully you enjoy it. Whilst you're enjoying that cocktail, feel free to ask some questions. So you can come off mute, or you can jump in the chat, ask these guys some questions, and then obviously we'll finish up. But yeah, has anybody got any questions so far, or is everybody being it nice?
I think of my memory. This is like 60 mils wild rose, and then 10 mil of like a fortified white. I think we use like Lillet Blanc at the Celador, and then bitters. Is that the way it's going?
Dashes and bitters. Yeah.
It's just like a great stir down one. And then yeah, I don't know how well the rose petal would have traveled so much anyway. So it's probably a better idea.
Yeah, won't send anything fresh through the post. But it's definitely something I'd like to try more. You know, it's something I've never done is mixing. But these are on the website, very easy cocktails to follow. You know, and we'll also have them on our website. We'll put them up underneath each product so that there's at least a mixer there to have with. Yeah, but does anybody have, if there's no questions, anybody have a favourite you want to share with us in the chat of the night, what you thought was a favourite? I know that the cocktail is going to be your favourite, so don't choose that one, choose a gin instead. So,
Before I come on tonight, I would have said citrus and pepperberry, but the bush honey, that hit the spot for me tonight.
Yeah. I'm going to say, yeah, definitely the bush honey. And, you know, I did enjoy the Pinot, but I think for me, the wild rose, I actually quite like it. I like something that was a little different, a little floral, and, you know, so, and I can't get that in whiskey really, so I look for it in gin, and I quite enjoy that. So I like those two.
I'm
Well grown,
hoping
yeah.
in the future for some big crazy ginger forward. I don't care how he does it.
Ginger.
But figure it out, Rick. Give us some mad ginger gin. I'd love that.
If anyone's ever down in Hobart, like Rick sort of mentioned earlier about the ginger distillate, book in for a gin blending experience at the gin bar with the wonderful staff there, and you can make your own ginger gin and bespoke ginger gin you can take home. I think a friend of mine made, he was trying to make like a Thai curries, like flavored gin, because there was lemongrass and ginger, and you sort of mix it all together. It was delicious, absolutely delicious. But yeah, so please, yeah, come on down to Hobart and book in for one of those, because it's well worth it. But to go off my favorite gin, I'm a company guy, guys, and I've been with Lark for 6 years, and I've been drinking Lark for a good 11 years, and the classic's still my go-to.
Really? It's good. That's great. Although it's probably the one you need to sell most of, so.
I think I'm just so comfortable with it. I've just had it for so long. Like, I used to manage a bar before I started at Lark in Hobart, and yeah, we used to just, that was our house pour, and it was just in everything that I've ever done. And then we only had one gin for a long time there until Rick got on board, started making gin for 40 Spotted. And then there was more with like the winter and the summer and the spring, and then all of the new range that we've got over the last few years. So I still like, that's the flavor I like, because I don't know, it reminds me of childhood.
I think like Jill's nailed it in the head there. I think though that when you think of gin, and the classic's the one that you would go to. I fancy a gin. The other ones are a bit more experimental, etc., and sipping gins, etc. Whereas the classic is that I just want a gin and tonic, or I want something gin and soda or something, and and it's really nice and fresh, and it's got that like nice pepperberry through it, and it does really well. So and like tasting other gins, I think sometimes they do too much, whereas the classic's just like, what, it's nice. It's it's yeah.
That's it. Great. Classic for a reason.
That's right. Yeah, I think so. Definitely. Yeah. Rick, what's your favorite?
Depends on the mood. Like I can't say one over the other, to be honest.
What's your best creation then? What's the one that you've created, and you know what, that's my best creation? We've probably never had it. You're going to say Jenke, aren't you? You're going to wind us up.
No. I think it's the raspberry and rose. I think there was just a moment where I remember getting the recipe just right, and then just texting everyone at work and saying I've nailed it. That was a good feeling. But I think I still come back to the citrus and pepperberry. It's just so easy drinking. That's my go-to.
Definitely.
It's probably not a question I should ask you, like, but we're all amongst friends here, so why not? But have you ever created a gin and you thought, boom, this is outstanding, and the businesses went, yeah, we don't think we can market that one?
There's been a few, yeah.
Because I would love to know what you've created that we don't have. Like, what other things have you come up with from the mind of Rick that's that you've come up with a flavour profile, but we've not yet released, not yet seen on the market?
I've got books full of recipes. These are like chockers full of different recipes that they didn't. I think there's something to it, but and if marketing ever asks for something in specific, I can go through those and maybe pick one out. But that's one of the cool things about the job, is I can blend things and no one else in the world will ever get to taste it, which is, I don't know, maybe selfish, but it's really cool.
Yeah, I was going to say it's cool for you, not for us.
Yeah. I love nothing more than standing here or sitting, whatever, blending, having music on, and just lose yourself to the botanicals. That's I can't explain what that's like. I can't. It's an amazing feeling, and just getting something right, which takes forever.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, like, it's been an absolute pleasure tasting these tonight. So
yeah, Does the music influence your gin, the one that you make?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty eclectic with what I listen to. You know, from anything from classic to R&B, rap, thrash, and I find when I'm blending and I'm listening to a particular kind of music, the next day when I come back and I smell it or taste the spirit that I made, you kind of get a sense what kind of mood that I was in when I was blending it by listening to the music. It's really interesting. But yeah, different music, different emotions, different memories. You know, it all plays into it.
I'm thinking of a Neil Young inspired gin. I think that'd be mad, but I think it'd be cool.
Well, next time I do some blending, I'll chuck on some Neil and see how I go.
Bloody awesome.
Yeah, some
limited
limited
gin
gin with that in the
shrooms in there
bottle.
or something.
Jill was saying some limited gin that maybe with that on the bottle, telling us what you were listening to at the time. It's a pretty cool release. Was it so? Look, thanks very much for your time. It's been great, Will and Rick, to have you here and to share your experience at the distillery and with 40 Spotted. Thank you very much. Thanks to everybody who's tuned in. We might stick around for a bit of a chat after this. I'm not sure who'll be up for it, but usually we stay on for maybe 5-10 minutes. But I've gone a little bit over tonight. I hope you've enjoyed all the gins. We do have Glengoyne whiskey tasting next week. So if you've not booked in for that, it'll be a great one. We've got some really limited whiskey from the distillery. They are only available at the distillery in that tasting. And then at the end of the month, we're going to King Lake Distillery, just north of Melbourne, and they're going to show us. We've only got one product, and what we're going to do is we're going to break that product down. We're going to start right at the start of the barley, and we're going to be talking to the guys at the malting shed to make the barley, and then how they transport it to the distillery, how they use it at the distillery. We're going to taste the new make. We're going to taste it after a year, 2 years, then the final product at cask strength, and then the final product. So just take it all the way back and get to this product to the way they would do it. So it's going to be a great tasting. Unfortunately, that night I'll actually be at Lark Distillery, so I'll not be taking part in that one.
Why are you coming to Lark Distillery, Craig?
Sorry?
Why are you coming to Lark Distillery?
We're celebrating, is it 3 years?
30 years anniversary since Bill Lark started this wonderful industry that we have with all of these incredible distilleries around Australia. So it'll be a fun occasion.
Yeah, definitely. And Anthony, if you're still on, I'll be asking for Jenke when I'm there and to make another batch of it. I'll just be hounding Rick all night. Rick won't come anywhere near me after a while because it was, where's that Jenke? Where's that Jenke? But it'll be certainly a great night of celebration. It's like from my point of view, when Lark and Bill Lark started out, it was the start of Australian whiskey in the Australian industry, and that's why we call Bill the grandfather of whiskey. Godfather of whiskey here, and he's certainly going to put Tasmania, if not Australia, on the map for not just whiskey but now obviously gin, and everybody's looking at us. And I truly believe that with gin and whiskey, we're some of the most innovative in the world, and probably we need to sit back and start to think for a minute that in 20 years some of our whiskies and gins are just going to be iconic. To be jumping on them now and to taste them, etc. And the rest of the world's going to be talking about them pretty soon. So it's fantastic. It's a great job everybody's doing in there, and it's not all about distillery and just who's in the distillery. It's a whole team of people that put this stuff together for you. So thank you very much for your time, and hopefully we'll get you on in the future again with some limited releases, and we're talking about 40 Spotted again. But brilliant. Thank you.
Right.
And thanks everybody again for your support.
That'd be great.
Thanks very
so
much,
much
Craig.
for everything, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks so much, Craig.